The quiet town of Eldridge, Iowa, had for decades been considered the embodiment of that very small-town America pictured on greeting cards. Here, everyone knew their neighbor's name back 3 generations, and the biggest criminal incident in the past 5 years was believed to be the theft of a garden gnome from the pastor's yard. It was in this place that the Miller family appeared in 2004. They built what locals dubbed the Glass House, an architectural masterpiece with enormous panoramic windows, standing on a hill like a beacon of prosperity. Mark Miller was a brilliant corporate attorney, Sarah an active volunteer who organized charity dinners, and their daughter Kaylee a star student at the local school and a future Ivy League hopeful. They seemed too perfect to be real. And, as it later turned out, they were. It all began on a gloomy Tuesday, October 14, 2012. Mrs. Higgins, an elderly neighbor whose window looked directly into the Miller's kitchen, noticed the first oddity. The light in the living room of the Glass House had not been turned off for 3 days. At first, she thought the family had gone away for the weekend and forgotten the lights. But Mark Miller was a man of almost pathological order. He would never have left even a nightlight on. When Mrs. Higgins approached the house to check the mailbox, she saw something on the living room's panoramic glass that made her heart stop. A clear handprint, as if deliberately left, smeared with something dark and sticky. Detective Jim Baker, a veteran investigator, arrived at the scene within 15 minutes. When the police forced open the oak doors, what struck them was not a scene of violence, but a complete, almost sterile absence of any struggle. Inside reigned a coziness that was terrifying. 3 cups of coffee stood on the dining table. In 2 of them, the liquid had only evaporated halfway. A meat pie was finishing on the stove, which over 3 days had turned into a charred lump of coal, filling the house with a sickly sweet smell of burnt food. In Kaylee's room, a record was spinning on the turntable, the needle long since hissing in the final groove. But there were no people. All personal belongings, wallets with credit cards, keys to 2 expensive SUVs, mobile phones, and even Sarah's asthma inhaler, were in their places. The Miller family had simply vanished in the middle of an ordinary dinner, as if they had been erased from reality with a rubber eraser. The first week of the investigation became a living hell for the sheriff's department. Eldridge was flooded with journalists, and conspiracy theories multiplied hourly on social media, from alien abduction to a secret escape from debts. But Jim Baker knew, people do not flee from debts leaving a warm dinner on the table. During a second, more thorough search, forensic experts noticed something strange in the foundation's design. The house plans submitted to City Hall in 2004 did not match the actual size of the basement. Behind a false wall lined with wine racks, they discovered a sealed room measuring 10 square meters. But it was not a nuclear war bunker. When Baker stepped inside, he felt the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. The room was lined with professional soundproofing, and along one wall stretched a desk with dozens of monitors. They were broadcasting the lives of Eldridge's residents in real time. Mark Miller didn't just know his neighbors. He had access to their webcams, home phones, and security systems. Metal cabinets held hundreds of folders of blackmail material, recordings of the mayor's intimate encounters, copies of offshore accounts belonging to the local judge, evidence of corruption in the sheriff's department. The perfect attorney was the town's supreme manipulator. Everyone who thought he was a friend was, in fact, on his hook. Suddenly, the list of suspects expanded to every second adult in town. However, the real shock awaited detectives in the daughter's room. Kaylee, the golden girl, turned out not to be merely a witness to her father's affairs. An analysis of her laptop, which, unlike her father, she had tried to encrypt, revealed that under the alias NightBird, she was a legend in hacker circles. While her father collected paper blackmail, the daughter played in the major leagues. She hacked FBI servers and major corporations. The last file she opened an hour before the disappearance was titled Project Omega. It was an archive of data from a federal witness protection program. The investigation hit a dead end until 2 weeks after the disappearance. The first physical clue was found in Blackwood Forest on the outskirts of town. It was not a body. It was a metal box buried beneath an old oak tree that Kaylee had mentioned in one of her encrypted forum posts. Inside lay an old police dashcam from 1994. The recording captured a fatal event from 18 years earlier. The current sheriff of Eldridge, then a young patrol officer, accidentally Str. Mark Miller's true identity surfaced only after federal agents intervened. An analysis of fingerprints taken from the secret room produced a match with a database that had been classified for more than 20 years. Mark Miller was, in fact, Anthony Vitale, the former chief accountant and brain of one of Chicago's bloodiest mafia clans. In 1996, he struck a deal with the government, turning in the entire leadership of the syndicate in exchange for a new life. The Witness Protection Program gave him a new identity, but the paranoia he brought with him never disappeared. His surveillance of neighbors in Eldridge was not an attempt at blackmail, but a desperate effort to control his surroundings. He feared the Mafia would find him even decades later. And he was right, but he was wrong about how they would find him. The key to the mystery was Sarah. Detective Baker began digging into the biography of the wife and uncovered a horrifying anomaly. According to documents, Sarah Miller had been born in a small village in the state of Maine. But when investigators went there, they found only an overgrown cemetery where the real Sarah Miller had died as a child back in 1978. The woman who had lived in the glass house for 18 years was, in real life, a professional actress. Moreover, she was the daughter of Don Carlo Bonetti, the very mafia boss whom Anthony Vitale had sent to prison for life. This was revenge stretched out over decades. Sarah didn't just find Anthony. She changed her face through plastic surgery, studied his every habit, and engineered their chance meeting in a Chicago library 2 years after his disappearance. She made him fall in love. She married him, knowing exactly who he was. She bore him a child, feeling hatred every day toward the man who had destroyed her father. Sarah waited 18 years, until her father died in prison, and until she received a signal from her brother, who had taken over the clan, that it was time to come home. That night, October 14th, dinner was not an ordinary one. Sarah slipped a sedative into the coffee of her husband and daughter. She planned to hand Anthony over to her brothers for a public execution in Chicago, and Kaylee, the girl in whose veins flowed the tainted blood of a traitor, she intended to send to a convent in Europe to erase forever the memory of this disgrace. Sarah believed everything was under control, but she underestimated her daughter. Kaylee, who had been hacking government servers since the age of 13, had long known that her father was a mafia accountant in hiding. What truly shocked her was discovering that her mother was the daughter of the enemy. She watched them through her own hidden cameras installed throughout the house. She saw her mother secretly communicating with Chicago via encrypted satellite links. Kaylee felt no love for either parent. They were both liars to her. And she decided to play her own game. That night, Kaylee only pretended to drink the coffee. When Sarah opened the door to the mafia hitmen who arrived in an unremarkable van, Kaylee was already prepared. She had activated a protocol that sent all the recordings from Mark's basement, blackmail material on the sheriff and the mayor, to major U.S. newspapers and the FBI. This triggered such media and law enforcement chaos in Iowa that all entrances to and exits from the state were blocked for several hours. But Kaylee and her parents were already gone. So what really happened? 2 years later, Baker received the final piece of the puzzle from an anonymous source at Interpol. Surveillance footage from a private airport showed Kaylee holding her own mother at gunpoint, forcing her onto a small plane owned by one of the rivals of the Chicago Mafia. Kaylee sold her mother to the enemies of her own grandfather in exchange for safety and a clean ticket to a new life. Mark Miller's body was found in 2014. He was not killed by the Mafia. He died of a heart attack in a cheap motel in Mexico, abandoned by everyone. Sarah Miller vanished into the basements of a cartel, and no one ever heard of her fate again. And Kaylee, the girl born into the lies of the glass house, became a true ghost of the digital world. Today, the glass house in Eldridge stands empty. No new owners have ever been found, because locals say that at night a light can be seen in the windows. These are not ghosts. It's just the old security system, which Kaylee Miller still occasionally switches on remotely from somewhere on the other side of the world to remind the town she is still watching. The case went down in history as the Great Disappearance of Eldridge, but for those who know the truth, it was neither an escape nor a kidnapping. It was a perfectly staged exit by an artist leaving the stage, with the life of an entire town serving as the set. Kaylee Miller outplayed professional killers, federal agents, and her own parents, proving that in a world made of glass, the best weapon